Hey listeners, make sure to check out our 2-week free trial for unlimited yoga, breathwork, and Ayurveda on betteryoga.net.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Better Yoga Podcast. My name is Tiger Bai, and today I am joined with a very special guest, a dear friend and colleague of mine, Alessandro Romagnoli. He is a psychotherapist and sports psychologist specializing in cognitive neuroscience and breathwork. He holds 3 postgraduate diplomas in clinical neuropsychology, in psychosomatic medicine, and in sports psychology. And he brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to his breathwork practices working with clients. He's a certified master instructor with Oxygen Advantage, just like me, also in the Buteyko Clinic method and in the Wim Hof method, XPT performance breathing, and mindfulness sport performance enhancement. So he's very qualified, my friends. He's collaborated or currently collaborates with the Italian Olympic fencing team, professional football teams, rugby teams, and has worked as a mental coach for Ferrari athletes, MMA fighters, and more. He's also a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Lastly, Alessandro is really passionate about traveling and has lived in over 14 countries, including the Democratic Republic of Congo, where he was born, Madagascar, Tanzania, Kenya, Romania, France, Spain, Italy, and more. And he teaches and speaks French, Italian, and English. This one will be in English because I don't speak either of those languages. So welcome, Alessandro.
You can choose one of the language that you want. You can hear the French one, or the Italian would be also better. It's up to you. It's up to you.
Whatever comes most naturally to you.
Oh yeah, it will be a confused accent. Sorry, people, if there is something that you won't understand, please let me know on the comments. Anyway, Tiger, I want to thank you for the invitation again today. Thank you. And above all, also thank you people for watching it. I hope that you will grab some good elements for yourself, for example, for your knowledge and also for your practice. So you're welcome to ask whatever they want or whatever you want on the comments. Anyway, thank you, Tiger. And please go ahead.
I'm so glad you're here. So we start every episode asking our guests the question, what does your daily practice look like these days? Interpret as you may.
My practice changed a lot in my everyday life because in my condition sometimes, especially in this moment, I'm okay, but I'm unfortunately a kind of narcoleptic oriented person. I mean, I really have the condition that is quite, I like to say, is quite present in my life, quite diagnosticated. However, I won't collapse in front of you guys, so don't worry at all about this. I won't pass out and start to snore. No, it's okay. So unfortunately, I have to meditate a little bit more because it's a kind of way to save my own energies. For example, being in front of you now, I'm okay, but sometimes around 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. I'll start to fall asleep and I want to sleep a lot. And I can sleep up to 14 hours sometimes if I don't control myself. Anyway, the best way for me has started with meditation, mindfulness, okay, the one that we know nowadays as mindfulness. However, with mindfulness, I started when I was more or less 14, 13, after different circumstances. And now in my everyday life, I meditate in a particular way. So, for example, during the day, I will start to apply maybe 3 times 20 minutes of slow breathing practice. I will just put something in my nose, for example, maybe a piece of paper or maybe a strap on my nose and breathe just from one nostril, or add a nose plug from swimmers just to reduce and to induce a passive breathing light exercise because I don't have to pay attention about my breath while doing the breathe light exercise, and I will fall asleep. And with this especially, I will start to listen for 3-2 hertz music that will induce me in a more passive state of relaxation. I don't know if you know the 432 hertz music. They're really helpful for me. Sometimes on YouTube you have the binaural plus 432 hertz music, and this helps me a lot personally. And if I fall asleep, in my case, I welcome it. I won't fight for it, and I will repeat it 3 times. My second way of meditating is totally more oriented to my creativity. Sometimes, for example, I will be on my computer and I will start to write down some things about my next books, or I will write something, an idea about a methodology, or I'll build up something for my sport athletes, a methodology that may help them using computers, using breathing exercises. This is really my way of meditating. And why I can recognize that I'm meditating, because I don't have any kind of thought parasites in my mind, intrusive thoughts, as we call them in psychology. And moreover, I'm not thinking about anything else, and I produce something that I enjoy, and I literally enjoy it. And when I see that I reduce my time by meditating, my meditation time, I will notice that I have a problem by being less creative. So I combine both of them, writing and breathing exercises with music, binaural or 432 hertz music, and praying sometimes also, some kind of prayers. That's
I
it.
love that. It's yeah, I too like to listen to those audio tracks sometimes when I'm breathing or meditating, and they are very, very effective. It's like a worm right into my brain. Now, you mentioned that you started meditating and being attracted to mindfulness in your early years, around early teen years. Can you tell me more about your upbringing and how that drew you towards studying psychology and being interested in mindfulness?
Yes, of course. It starts from all the traveling that you've mentioned at the beginning. Okay, I was feeling like in the middle age when they were presenting someone with a scroll. Here is Sir Alessandro Romagnoli. I was having the same vibe. It was fun. Anyway, everything started in Congo in 1990, and in 1990 we had different civil war issues that were starting already present in certain places and regions in Congo. And with my family, we had to escape. We had to escape. It was from the Belgian part of Congo. We had to escape. And by escaping, we went to Burundi and Rwanda. And in 1994, the civil war exploded in Rwanda. After many years and after traveling, of course, I won't hide you that I've seen a lot of violence when I was a kid. And when I was in Madagascar, my parents noticed that before going to school, for example, they noticed that I was starting to yawn very often. I was yawning. So something like 50 times a day. Let's give it a try at home. We can give it a try also right now, Tiger, if you want. For example, start to yawn. Let's force yourself to yawn just right now. Okay. Again, a bigger yawn. Yawn like a lion. Again. Last time again. Okay. As you can see and as you can try, how do you feel right now?
Tired.
Tired, lightheaded in my case. Uh,
Yeah.
so many things. In Madagascar, in the end, we didn't have the possibility to have a lot of, we didn't have the possibility to have any kind of psychotherapists or psychology counselings because maybe, I don't know today, most probably, but in the past, I was not informed about a similar figure. Yes, one at the high school, at the international high school where I was actually studying. However, it wasn't in my habits, and then my parents led me to do some kind of martial arts, kickboxing, for many years. And I met one professor among the teachers. I met someone who was an old monk, a monk specialized in Buddhism, and he taught me to a monk in a Buddhist monk in Madagascar is quite funny, I know, but it was someone who was actually living there for some time. And he taught me many things about meditation. I noticed that my yawnings were actually reducing after every time I was going at school. And what led me to actually study psychology, it wasn't really this experience. It was just an interest. I remember that I was watching a movie in Madagascar and I saw a psychologist talking to someone and it inspired me. And I asked my mom, Mom, would it be nice for you if I would be a psychologist? I was 14, 13. And she answered me, Alex, it was your father's ex-wife's work. I said, "Oh, it's better to avoid this topic." So in the end, I said, "Okay, no worry, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this." I'm going to continue my studies at the high school, and I finished with the high school once I arrived in Europe in 2015. And I decided to start psychology after the motivation of my father and a teacher, a philosophy teacher, and they told me to continue with this and to do my studies. And then I moved to Italy, where I finished my studies at the university. And the professor was actually the professor of my thesis. I've done a thesis where I've resumed 5,000 years of mindfulness, how it started and where it landed. So mindfulness, for example, many things happen between the mindfulness of Buddha teaching, Sati, that was the name, the Sanskrit or Burmese name of mindfulness. And many things happen between Buddha and the application that you can find on your smartphone. Many things happen between. And I had to resume those 5,000 years. Afterward, while doing the thesis, I've been in touch with the breathwork, especially in the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where my back was injured, and I've started to do yoga for BJJ to rehabilitate my back. And I started to see a lot of things on breathwork, and many of those techniques were already techniques that I used to practice with this Buddhist teacher. On the other side, someone after a conference, medicine student, sent me something about Wim Hof, and it attracted me. And then I decided to specialize. I finished my studies by writing something on breathwork in 2017. It was a 2 years thesis. And I started to continue to investigate the world of breathwork, met Patrick with the Oxygen Advantage, finished the boutique course, and then specialized in this domain. And it led me today to have a podcast with you.
So this makes me curious because you've lived in so many different countries and each, I'm sure, with a unique cultural landscape. Looking back now with the knowledge you have and understanding the mind and trends and patterns of the mind as you do now, is there something that is universal among cultures when it comes to the desire to find that peacefulness and that mindfulness that comes through these ancient practices? Is there a thread that, no matter the culture, ties them together through this desire to self-reflect, be still, quiet the mind?
But if there is something about different cultures, I recall this philosopher. He was a phenomenologist philosopher, a French one. His name was Paul Ricoeur. Okay. And Paul Ricoeur used to say that when someone is born in a certain place, okay, he will be provided with symbols, first of all, with symbols in order to understand himself and the people and the world around him. And the use of those symbols, languages, behaviors, dialogues, scripture, all those kind of things that compose a culture will be used in order to understand himself and the rest of the world. So every time, for example, let's imagine you from Tiger from the US, okay? The way, for example, you will intend breath work at my same age, okay? Let's imagine each other at the same age, 14, learning something, in your case, from yoga, and in my case, from meditation in an African place, okay? We are bent to use the symbols that we received based on our environment. And thanks to this, it will give us the possibility to read ourselves and the world around us, but in a different way. So the way one day when you will meet yoga and you will understand, I will see yoga, I will have a different understanding from you, and you will have a different, and I will have a different understanding. Sorry, I will have a different understanding from you, and the same applies to you. There is something about all those spiritualities, and there is some common factor also behind the fact, beside the fact of being, to exist in that world. There is that kind of desire that is actually present in all the different communities and spiritual communities, is that spiritual desire of transcendence. We want transcendence. We need transcendence. Maybe some people will need transcendence for peace. Maybe they will use spiritual practices for maybe power to get some kind of magic power, or to actually reach a certain level of unconditional love. And those elements, those three elements, and there are many others considering the topics on spirituality. I've read some papers from the sociologist on spirituality and what compose spirituality. One of them is transcendence, the community. The other one, as I said, is also those kind of things. And through those different breathing practice, or the prayers, or the repeated mantras that you can find in Hindus or in Buddhism, or repeating the Rosarium as we have in the Catholic Church, repeating the Pater Noster, repeating those kind of prayers will actually help us to be devoted, to absorb all those kind of spiritual practice into our body, to reach a certain level of, I don't want to say detachment, but to have a certain higher level of consciousness and to reach certain aspect. As I said, for example, peace is one of them, more unconditional love. Okay, I was writing something on Kundalini, pranayama and pranayama combined with bandhas. I know that Kundalini, just for being more, and then you can correct me, but Kundalini is mainly dormant and is actually located in the hips. And through different breathing practice and locked in bandhas, it will help to actually awaken that Kundalini as a snake and to reach the different esotericism parts present in the body. However, those kind of discussions are energetic consideration, but spirituality and through those different breathing practice, people will use them just to reach a certain point of view. However, nowadays those things have changed. People will tend to use those kind of practice just to maybe relax or to be chill or just to remove a high level of anxiety. And anxiety doesn't arise like this. It arises for different reasons. One of them is actually people has a lot of responsibility. I'm referring to the mom who has 4 children and she has to sustain them. It's not the same thing as we had in the past where we had another way of approaching spirituality. Now spirituality sometimes in the background. So things are changing now. And the way how we apply breathing practice according to spirituality, also the notion of spirituality changed. It remained. The depth remained. Transcendence. I want to transcend in the case of that woman, that mom. She want to transcend the pain in order to reach a certain level of quality of life and to profit of all her life condition so far. I don't know if it makes sense.
It makes so much sense, and I'm really glad I asked that question because now I have 3 more. Yeah, there are so many things I want to touch on that you just said. First, what you were saying, with the language of detachment and transcendence, it reminds me of a conversation I was having with Colin, my husband, just yesterday. We were walking back from the gym, and we were discussing the difference between attachment and connection. And in many Eastern traditions, including yoga, really the ultimate goal is detachment that's not devoid of connection. Because through learning to detach from the illusion that we mistake for reality, everyday life, our jobs, our career, our house, our dog, our kids, all of these things that are so ingrained in our cultural perspective, in our emotional perspective as reality, as important. Really, a goal of yoga is to detach from these things, but not in a way that is nihilistic and not in a way that removes compassion or empathy. And so it's a detachment that is full of connection in an odd way. And what you were saying reminds me of that, because there's the journey of the individual in a mind-body practice, and there's also the journey of the individual in context with the community. And I'm probably going to name the wrong philosopher, so somebody can fact check me on this. I want to say it's Heidegger, but I'm not sure if that's right. The idea that when a community comes together to chant, to pray, to sing, any spiritual, cultural connecting activity, there's a transition from individual to community that unlocks a different realm of spirituality, that unlocks a different perspective that's felt in the body and perceived by the mind. And so what you were talking about, all of these different cultures having a unique spiritual and cultural perspective, and the person understanding their personal journey through the cultural mirror. There is something also universal about coming together with the common goal of being greater than you are now.
Mm.
That I think is one of the reasons why people fall in love with yoga, with breathwork and meditation, because they go to a class, they go to a physical place, even an online class like we have. There's a sangha, there's a community that no matter where you're from or what your cultural context is, whether it's all the same or a mixture of different kinds of people from different places, there is a transcendence in and of itself just by coming together. Not sure what your thoughts are on that.
I will go back to the attachment. Okay, I will try to talk about attachment from psychology, developmental psychology framework. Developmental psychology studies the psychology process from when you are a fetus to a senior person. Okay, and many things happens. For example, from intelligence, at the beginning you have an adaptive intelligence where you are flexible to learn many things, languages. However, with time it got structured, and from learning a new knowledge, you will use a kind of knowledge that is crystallized in light with all your experience that you've spent, and will be considered from the eye of the other as a wisdom. Okay, and this is why a lot of help me with this word, a lot of wiseness, I would like to say it like this, is
Wisdom.
wisdom is attributed to old people and to elders, generally speaking. Okay, so let's go back to attachment. In light of the knowledge coming from developmental psychology, we are actually predisposed, genetically speaking, to structure links and affective links to the people around us. Okay, especially starting from our main caregiver, okay, our mom, in this case, the mother. If someone is born in a family with a proper functional family, I mean. So in that proper functional family, we have an attachment that starts from the body connection, the body closeness, holding the baby. And this closeness starts to also to get improved with the eye contact with the mother and many other things. Okay. And after a while, based on the attachment between the mother, so in lightif, if the mother is present, so you will have a very good attachment at this point. And having that good attachment is very functional to the health development of your son. Also from a neurological perspective, we need that attachment. It's fundamental. Okay. This attachment is way too strong, overprotective, the kid, the child will be predisposed to a certain unhealthy developmental way of growing up. If it's too, for example, passive, and maybe where you see the mother who is withdrawn from this attachment, things are going to change also, and this will lead to a kind of abandonment. And the way how you structure your links, your attachment with someone else, but relying on the quality of this links of the attachment, it will also contribute in your way about how to develop further social interaction, social cognition in the future. Let's imagine it's actually recognized from a neurological perspective that if a kid, especially it was noticed during the Second World War in orphan structure, that if a kid doesn't have any kind of social connection and especially attachment and very like trustworthy connection with a caregiver, it will be led, he will be led, or she will be led to a negative and healthy growing up. Sometimes some kids, you can notice them, they cannot even distinguish colors, which is insane. They're looking at things, or they don't have a proper development of their vocabulary, for example. So many other things like this. This has been a kind of struggle for me from the spiritual perspective. From a spiritual perspective, and also the way how I've seen it with my patients who are studying spiritualities and from Orient, they will start to believe that we have to be disconnected from everything. We'll have to be disconnected. However, to be disconnected from the fact of appreciating a car, or appreciating or to have some attachments to a car, it is something totally normal. From a psychology perspective, it is normal because we attribute to that car certain meanings. We love that car. We spent a lot of time by doing this. Let's imagine that those connections are normal and they're legit sometimes. And let's imagine the grandmother. She lost, for example, her husband last year, and there is maybe, I don't know, a color about him that she wants to keep with herself as much as it's possible because she feels close to him. She feels certain kind of connection, okay? Transcendence, again, with him through an object. If I come there and I steal her color, she will be
Her
sad.
necklace.
Her necklace. And she will be, of course, she will be justified in this. She will be really justified. So, in my perspective, the way how do we approach things, I love the Greeks, how they used to do. They used to take, for example, a cup, or they used to take a chair, and they believed that, for example, this cup had a soul in it. And they used to respect it, and they used to clean it, and they used to, for example, to maintain it in a good quality. Okay? Because they believe it had a soul. And I approach this in a better way because there is a deeper sense of respect toward things. Instead of, yes, I have to withdraw, I have to stay away from the mundane world, I have to stay away from people. This is the way of withdraw yourself from this strong emotional connection from something is actually one of the biggest recipe of hysteria, also called conversion disorder. However, if you're born in a place that promote those kind of practice where you have to be withdrawn from society because it has a certain meaning that is bent to the culture orientation, for me it's justified because someone from this culture won't be a foreigner in this way of approaching things, and it will approach attachment and this detachment, or another way of connection. But for him, it will be something normal. Okay, but in the end, the thing that I appreciate the most is actually when you give value to things, a proper value, okay, which is normal, totally normal, but also you keep a good quality about them. Okay, because by giving some quality, for example, let's imagine you had a lot of money difficulties. Thinking about an 18 years old girl that I know. She had a lot of difficulties to gain some money, and she was super happy about her car. It's everything. Her car is everything, because it also can lead her to have a proper quality of life, to afford also a better income for going to work instead of taking the bus, and she can also spend less energies. Okay, at this point. And from this perspective, this will be very important for her. If she loses her car, her quality of life will also diminish at this point. This is just a raw example. I don't know if it makes sense, Tiger.
It makes a lot of sense, and I tend to agree with you because, you know, when I was first studying yoga, I was taught there are, kind of two kinds of yogis. You have essentially monks, people so deep in a spiritual practice that they are removed from society, and their devotion is not for direct societal good, but for personal enlightenment and continuation of the tradition, preservation of the tradition, which is very important in its own right.
Yeah.
And then you have householders, people like me who have a normal life in the context of my own society, but are using these practices to enhance that and to find some sort of truth and make sense of the world that I interact with. And your perspective, the developmental psychological perspective layered with the subtle body, would really bring us to the chakras, right? The way in which people attach or detach, have an ease of attaching or a dis-ease of detaching, is first chakra territory. Our roots, our groundedness, our connection to the planet, our stability, how stable and secure we feel physically and mentally. And there's a book I love called Eastern Body, Western Mind. I'm not sure if we've read that one. But it's basically a discussion of the chakras from a developmental psychological perspective. And the author talks about two currents in the body moving up through the chakras in the body. So we have a current of liberation, she says, from the base of the body up and out through the crown of the head, right? This is really the journey of the soul in any mind-body practice. To first establish a secure foundation, you have to have your 2 feet on the earth. You have to have a foot in the world to function. You can't just live in your head. You can't just live doing Kapalabhati breathwork all day. You're going to fly away. You have no tether. And so, working from the foundation of stability up through the other centers of the body, which each have a unique psychological imprint when balanced or unbalanced, up to this greater recognition of self and connection to others, oneness, transcendence, not necessarily that detachment per se in that word, but the removal of yourself from outcome and from psychological attachment to things that would lead to not letting go of the past in order to accept the moment and the future, right? A kind of stagnation that results from attachment. And then we also have a current of manifestation. So taking all of these things in our head, these things we want to become reality, could be as practical as, I want to grow my business. I want to make more money. Taking those thoughts, ether, this space, this is not a reality, this is completely in the head, and manifesting it into reality, into something physical and real. And we need both of those currents. We need our thoughts to become reality, and we need our reality to hold us securely in order to have a greater perspective of thought. And I think, of course, anything we do rests on our early childhood experiences, for better or worse. And that being said, do you think that, for example, yourself, people who grow up no stranger to violence and seeing things that nobody in their right mind would want a kid to be having to experience, do you think that there's hope for every kid like that through practices like these to come to terms with their experience in order to transcend it and live the life they want to live, manifest a new reality?
I worked in psychiatry, and I have some sport athletes, and I have also some friends who had passed through certain PTSD traumas, and most of them, there is also a personality perspective when someone will be, I don't want to say resilient, but more, for example, torn from suffering, okay, and from this who will want to get rid of it in a way or another, okay, from one perspective. And you will have some people who are totally devastated and who cannot react. And for them, they will need to rely on someone because, from a personality perspective, or not, or maybe they are just exhausted, they cannot fight anymore, it will be more hard for them to engage in something. And if they have a supporting family or a supporting community, this will make the difference and it will help them to rehabilitate in a certain way. On the other side, people who will have to engage in a certain way with willingness, you have some those kind of people, but it's not for everyone. I don't mean everyone has to be like, you have to will it. Sometimes you don't want to will because you don't have the energies behind it. This trauma has been really, really hard. And if you say to someone, please accept it, you're actually adding another kind of violence where you're forcing someone to accept something that maybe they don't want to accept and they don't want to think about it. Okay? So it is possible. It is possible. It takes time, and it will depend on the degree of the trauma. It will depend on the degree of it will depend on the type of personality. It will depend also of if that person is living or coming from or living and coming from a supportive family or community. It will depend on the environment. If the environment, or I mean the political institution, hospital institution, will also make available proper care, psychology care or medicine care, healthcare systems, it will depend on all those things. And all those things together had a kind of they have a degree of freedom in order how to influence where they influence each other. It's like no, how do you call them? The engine pieces, when you turn around, all of them turn in the same way.
The gears.
The gears, it's exactly the same system. Okay. In some people, they will use, for example, this morning I was talking about someone on breathing exercises. They were doing a very strong hyperventilating breathing exercise, kind of holotropics, not Wim Hof. It's totally different. And another one, and they noticed that they read a lot of things on science that it's working, etc. And they noticed that they were actually having fever or herpes and those kind of things. Yes, of course, science would say that you have a lot of benefits from these techniques and you can have a vast literature about it. However, this strong of, even if it's super good, it's marvelous, it is a godlike breathing exercise. However, on you, it might not work. Maybe you will have another breathing exercise that is more adapted to your objective, to your performance, sometimes without even pushing on this. Okay, and then the approach will be different. So just to resuming very quickly, there is a sentence that I love from that Cain, and I find it back while you were talking, is the one from Cain, as I told you. The true temple is within, and the true posture is the inner posture. The yogi remains a yogi, whether seated on a chair, in lotus, or in Vajrasana. He does not seek proof of his being from material objects or the external form of gestures. He knows that true evolution is spiritual evolution. Thus, he can assume posture and accept or reject objects without being enslaved by them or imposing their enslavement on others. He can live just as well in the bustling capitals of the world as in a cave in the heart of the Himalayas or at the foot of the pyramids. In luxury or in poverty, he knows how to wear the attire of a worker or a farmer just as easily as that of a leader. Trials do not diminish him, just as success does not exalt him. And I finish with this. If you want, a lot of people are actually talking about, yes, we have to attach. This is a spirituality that personally I don't appreciate. It's too violent. As I told you, accept or you're full of ego, or etc. They're just violence. Use as an example music. Okay, for example, a girl who got left by her boyfriend, she will start, as it happens usually, I'm talking from experience, they will start to listen to the song Evanescence, Bring Me to Life. Okay, they'll start to listen to that music. I don't know why, it's a pattern. A lot of people, when they break up, they hear that song. And why listening again and again and again and again and again that song? After a while, you will be automatically I don't attach from that song, but you won't want to hear it anymore. However, when you won't hear about it anymore in the future, they will ask you, but what's your favorite song? And you will say, listen, I love rock. For example, Evanescence is one of them, but you spent a lot of time. This is a nice connection. Understood. I don't know if you got my point.
This episode of the Better Yoga Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Banyan Botanicals. Use the code KARI15 for 15% off their amazing Ayurvedic products. That's KARI 15. Don't forget to use the link in our show notes. And our friends at Vibrant Health. Use the code BETTER_yoga for 20% off your next purchase of supplements and superfoods at vibranthealth.com.
Yes, we can have an emotion around an experience, a song, an object that is unpleasant in the present, but with the perspective of memory was actually something helpful or something that carried you through, even if in the time the association with that song was I'm miserable and
Yeah.
lonely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think that any psychological healing, whether it's a product of a childhood that encountered violence or just, little t traumas that everybody experiences that are very valid in their own right, do you think any of this can be healed without working with the body? Or how centric is the body to healing in these ways?
The thing is, I will rely now on one field that is really important in the science domain, which is the one of the epigenetics or epigenetics physiology. We are old, and we are Homo sapiens. Okay, we are hunters, we are agricultures. Okay, we're both. And we are predators. We used to be from an animal perspective and purely physiological perspective, withdrawn from any culture of orientation and reference. We are predators. Okay. So nature gave us the possibility, and according, I don't remember where I read this, it's been a long time ago, it gave us the possibility to walk more than 30 kilometers per day. Okay, that's a lot. However, so it means that nature gave us the possibility also to auto-regulate itself through movement, naturally speaking. Okay, we are made for moving. We have arms, we have feet, we have legs, we have everything. Okay, so we have all those kind of features just to go forward, and this gives us a balance. And nature is very easy to understand. Sometimes it's very simple. If something is not used, okay, if for example we don't walk, so it will start actually to eliminate itself. For example, I saw my father having a stroke, and because of that stroke 2-3 years ago, he started to sit more in front of TV, and walking and using that body that is injured was for him something very, very difficult. He's also scared of moving because he's scared of falling down, which is something totally normal in elders. However, the thing is, by doing so, the locomotion is getting reduced, the attention span is getting reduced, and that's it. So one of the first also advice that we give to someone who's sad, and sadness is very wise. When you understand the meaning of sadness is super. You have a lot of meanings and there's a lot of communication in sadness. However, one of the main advice that we give to someone who had a trauma and then the sadness that is actually correlated to that trauma, for example, will advise that people to continue to go forward, to walk, to have a walk in nature, to stay outside the place, to walk, at least walking, okay, is one of them. And why? Because people in state of sadness, one of the main characteristic, despite the fact of feeling a lot of despair, to feeling a lot of sorrow, to feel hopeless, okay, those kind of things, to feel that everything is impossible ahead. Sadness is also called to be revitalized. And to be revitalized, we need to go in places where there is a lot of vital resources. And one of them is nature, forest, the sea, those kind of things, and just to be in contact, not, I would like to say, with the body, but at least start to walk and bring movement in your life. And by taking, if let's imagine my father going backward in his development, start to walk back again to have a proper physiology, it will give me a certain inner posture of self-confidence. In that case, with that self-confidence, it will give me the possibility just to move and to go to grab a coffee in the bar in front of my house and have a talk with someone while staying at home in front of TV. By moving your body, you have the possibility to gain more actions possibilities everywhere, gain and gather experiences, bring them back home, and makes you evolve. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, totally. It reminds me of the quote again. Apologies, I don't know who said it. Somebody can correct me, but if you're walking through hell, don't sit down.
Yeah, true. True.
Yeah, and it just reminds me from my yogic brain thinking about chakras. We have an event that brings up a certain emotion. Say, we were talking about the first chakra before, stability,
chakra?
safety, rootedness.
Hmm?
Yeah. Okay. So, you're growing up and your parents get divorced, or you have some sort of disruption to the household, or later in life, you're somebody who experiences real money problems. And I notice when people don't have a physical movement outlet that is functional and smart. So not just, running a bazillion miles or overstretching or doing something mindless. But when somebody has a mindful, a smart movement practice, a lot of this can be addressed because people who don't have one, say, they came from a broken family in some ways, they have money issues themselves, things that are very first chakra imbalances, they might become very rigid in the hips and the pelvis. They might be somebody who tucks their tail because there's a lot of fear around instability. It's anxiety provoking. It makes people scared. And so to ask somebody like that just to get into a pigeon pose or to open up their hips in some way, if they start to do that, it's not uncommon for people to start crying. And people make jokes all the time. Oh, like I always cry in pigeon pose, or these deep hip work poses make me feel so emotional, like something's releasing. And it's like, yes, like all of that psychology, all of that imbalance, all of that fear lives in the body. And really that's how I like to think about the chakras. Like they are psychological centers embodied, and they each represent a very different manifestation or process of liberation. The imbalances in a heart chakra versus a root chakra versus a throat chakra are all dependent on each other, but they can mean different things and might need to be treated differently. Of course, all starting from below, from the root, you need the stable foundation that's not too rigid. And me personally, growing up with parents who were divorced and moving across the country halfway through my childhood, like I always joke like my hips are hyper stable. And I think it was because just for so many years I was like trying to hold the ground beneath me for fear it was going to be ripped out, you know? And so now I'm a yoga teacher. I have a very robust home practice, and I've worked through a lot of these things, but if it wasn't for a physical movement modality that was embodying my mind and a smart movement modality, I'm not sure I could have worked my way through that just through therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy. I don't think it would have done the same, had the same result. Maybe I'm biased because I believe so much in this work, but I feel personally like a product of a method that really works in terms of using the body to unlock parts of the mind. Yeah, and that makes me wonder about, you're a black belt in BJJ and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, something I have never tried. but I know a lot of yogis who are very attracted to this martial art. Can you tell me a bit about your BJJ journey and how it might have coincided with getting to know yourself in a new way?
Actually, I started martial arts since I was a kid. 10 years of kickboxing, 10 years, 10 years of judo. I've done a little bit of kung fu. I've done grappling, BJJ. Now I'm also doing Greco-Roman wrestling, MMA. I like it because it has been my um, this has been my thing since I was a kid. I've tried I've tried a lot of team games like rugby, American football, but it wasn't my thing. However, I started, especially BJJ. I've done BJJ when I started BJJ. I was around 24, 23 years old. Okay, and I remember that I don't know how much is it in pounds. Sorry, but in kilos, I
It's
was
okay.
125 kilos. And I remember that I was super big, full of muscles and also fat. And one day I remember I was starting jujitsu. I said, "Oh snap! I'm too slow. I have to move. I'm a sick fuck. I have to move." I look at myself in the mirror. I said, "Listen, Alex, it's time to move. It's time to wake up. Okay, you will lose weight." And I've lost 35 kilos in 1 month. 35 is a lot. Is a lot, and I wouldn't do
Yeah.
it again. But in 1 month, I've lost everything. So super slim, and I continue to grapple. And where I started to apply all those breathing exercises during university, it was especially on with my teammates, okay, with the fighters, and I was actually leading the stretching, and then I was leading the relaxation pose. I was doing I was actually teaching them some kind of proper stretching. This led me to do yoga for BJJ as an instructor. I didn't continue because I had already a lot of work. I say hi to the guys if they fall on that video podcast in the future. And thanks to yoga and the way I think is what is attracting yoga and binding yoga and jiu-jitsu together beyond the problem of having a back issue or something, this will lead someone to do yoga, is especially the flowish part. Okay, when you're moving, is actually the flowish part. Everything comes super instinctive. Last time I was teaching a technique, I believe that I was able to teach that technique, and I said, "Snap, I cannot." And one of the old black belt told me, "Alex, it's normal. It's yours. You cannot teach it." Okay? Because it comes from you instinctively and it's yours. And that's flowish movement also from yoga. When I look at um, the vipassanas or the asanas, and when you see someone who got ingrained, for example, doing Ashtanga yoga, and you see them doing the asanas in a very flowish way, it's super delicate. And sometimes when you see people fighting in jiu-jitsu, it's flowish the same way. And those sensations are putting you in a trance situation, in a highly focused and open state of awareness while practicing it. And it's super enjoyable. It's super enjoyable. You are achieving the flow. And once it's over, you hear the timer actually booming and those kind of things. You interrupt everything, and bam, all your life, your mental life is coming back with all the responsibilities and so ever. It gives you a lot. However, you will understand something about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It doesn't give you a lot. Also, it removes you a lot of things. It removes that we, in the world of spirituality, they call ego, a sense of unconscious sense of self-importance that is, in some people, heightened, on the other, not really heightened. It removes also a lot of expectations. Maybe someone who has a lower grade than you can actually kick your ass. Okay. A lot of respect, especially for when you're fighting and using strength with a woman. Okay, even if we have, and I really believe in the woman state of mind strength, which is really, it's another kind of strength. I won't say she's stronger, but I've seen a lot of in men and women.
It's okay. You can say that.
No, it's because I've seen both of them. You are strong, you know that. And I mean it. Tiger, guys, is amazingly strong, and she's the reference, really, for me. She's an example for me. You're all red. See, guys, she's all red. Look at her. So that's it.
You said something that really strikes a chord with me, especially through my study of the Katona yoga method, which is a method of yoga we teach a lot on Better Yoga, developed by a woman named Naveen Mishan for the past 40 years. If you're not familiar with the practice, Google it. It'll change your life. But a principle of that practice, which is a principle of Hatha yoga in general, but really driven home in the Katona practice, is everybody has an innate nature, a first nature, everything we're born with, blessings, circumstances that we can't change. So this is, the innate knowledge. And then we have a side of us that is more scholastic, things that we've learned since being here, affinities that we're drawn to, things we pick up. And then really the yoking, the yoga on and off the mat is bringing them together. So, right hand, left hand, third hand, right eye, left eye, third eye, right? We have all of these yokings, these bindings together, in physical senses and also in these knowledge and wisdom senses. And what you were saying about having a hard time teaching something to another person is so interesting to me, because essentially what you've done is created your own recipe. You've been studying BJJ, you're a black belt, you have the credentials of the formal learnings, and then you also have all of this experience, uniquely Alex, that has informed the way you think about the sport in general. And so being able to relay such an inner alchemical experience can be really hard.
Yeah.
And I think some of the greatest teachers are able to articulate that. But then the danger becomes, and a teacher should always expect this, is that people will start to copy you, right? People will start to do what you do, especially newer teachers or newer people. They just kind of, oh, I really like that. I'm going to do it exactly like that. But really, it's all about studying and being attracted to certain methods, but then blending them with your own experience or other methods to create this layered palimpsestic approach. And I think a lot of that is intuitive. Like, we don't always stop to think why you do things the way you do them, because it's a product of everything you've already been doing and things that you're currently learning. And sometimes it's hard to articulate, because it's almost goes unnoticed that, you had to be told, because it's your own thing, Alex. This is your own method. Of course you can't yet teach it perfectly to somebody, because it's this new thing you've created. That being said, I think that people who are true creatives and people who bring new ideas into the world, revolutionary things, have to find a way to share them. And so I don't believe that you're unable to teach these things. I think that you have created methods for sport, for clinical applications that are so novel and truly helping people, braiding the mind and body together with all of your formal education and all of your travels and experience doing the work yourself. So it's my hope that you continue to find ways to
Thank you.
share it with the world.
But the thing is, thank you for those beautiful words, really. However, you know what is the most funny thing is, in the end, I'm a transmitter. Okay, in the end, all the knowledge that I gathered until today, one day it won't be available anymore. Maybe I will have it from some tracks. I mean, from tracks, I mean books that I've released, and that's it. Or maybe through all my messages, ChatGPT will gather them and use them tomorrow, and it will contribute to another knowledge, because knowledge has worked like this, okay, most of the time. From other people's perception, way of living, from different cultures, and combined together. And for example, this is the thing from yoga, as you were mentioning me once personally, where the yoga from 5,000 years ago is different from Katona yoga today. People don't have the same, for example, people in India from this time compared to Tiger today, Tiger doesn't have the same amount of time to study all of it, to practice and to work so deeply over herself, even if she is still available to learn and to live a certain way of spirituality according to our own philosophy, and that's okay. However, the things that gives that is quite amazing for me is Tiger. There is this is the law of psychology. Your personality is unique, as you said, and no other tigers will exist in the future, in the past. If I do a clone of this tiger, you will have two different tigers, because the second one will actually question her own identity. Am I the real one or not? For example, and everything will start around there. And the way how you're going to teach something, it will be bent to all the culture that you've gathered. You've done the synthesis of it. The way how will you teach? You will teach breathing exercises, and one day someone will tell, "Wow, Tiger has done a great work. I'm going to take it, okay, as a relay, and I will continue it, and it will change because this person will bring her own personality, and it will go like this endlessly, endlessly." And it is the same thing. However, without actually being aware of it, maybe in 5 generations, there will be Tiger Junior, 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 Tiger Super Junior, who will teach a breathing exercise in the way how Tiger taught it. However, they didn't have any connection between both of those generations, okay? And it will teach automatically something that has been taught automatically, okay? And instead of keeping your name, people will keep a habit and a savoir-faire without even being aware of it, and it will be in it. And this is the magic of it. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yes, totally. I mean, history, art, literature, trends, they all repeat themselves.
Yep.
It's the inside joke to be on, or really not so funny sometimes. But yes, the patterns will always emerge because that's nature, and nature's intelligence rests in its innate pattern.
And mixing.
Yes. So we always end our podcast with the same question, and that is, if you weren't doing this, if you weren't a psychologist, if you weren't a psychotherapist, what would you be doing?
Wall builder.
A well builder?
A wall builder, or maybe a medicine doctor. Okay, or something.
Those are very different.
I know, but those are the domains that are wall building. I love it because actually it engages a lot of efforts, and you see something getting built up. This is something that I've enjoyed, or something that was physically engaging. A medicine doctor, otherwise I would have enjoyed, because for the broad knowledge on the pharmacology. However, it's another domain. I wouldn't have time to do this. But if I would have to choose again, I would like to choose my work again anyway. But wall building, I tell you what, because when I was a kid, I remember to enjoy all the strong work. I was coming back home totally tired. However, in some places, this kind of work can be extremely exhausting for certain families. Yes, because it's very exigent. But I had the possibility to work as a wall builder when I was a teenager, and I had very good teammates and colleagues who helped me with this, and I learned a lot. Even if there were people who were coming from very humble places, I was feeling really good with them, because life sometimes was really simple, especially in agriculture. You wake up in the morning, you just collect things. However, after years, it can have a certain weight on your health, really. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, but
As the ancients would say, chop wood, carry water.
yeah, true. I remember I finished with this. I once asked a kid during one psychotherapy session, what would you like to be in the future? He answered me, old. Amazing. Amazing.
A great goal.
I loved it. I loved it. Super. Tiger, I wanted to thank
Oh,
you. I wanted to thank you for the invitation of this podcast. I really mean it. And people, I would like to tell you that you're really lucky to have someone as a Tiger doing those kind of work, and especially in yoga. She helped me, especially with my lower back. I still use the mat behind my feet while working on the standing desk. So
oh,
it's
good.
working properly. And she's amazing. And she's, my God, she's a monster in working. So, an example. I really mean it. You're turning
I
red once
appreciate
again.
that. Well, I'm just all flushed. Anyway, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Tiger.
Likewise. And if you want to find out more about Alessandro's work, his programs, everything he has going on, whether that's in English, French, Italian, whatever language you may also speak, I'll link that all in the show notes so you can find him and get chatting with him too. So thanks, everybody, and have a beautiful day.
Yep. Can I finish it with something? Very
Sure, of course.
People, this is an advice that I give to everyone around. If you're practicing something, whatever you are practicing, just remember two things that are important, and they are your inner compass. If it works, super. But if it works and you have fun or it gives you peace, this is the best way for you. That's it. Take care, people.
Mic drop.
We hope you enjoyed today's show. Don't forget to check out our 2-week free trial for unlimited yoga, breathwork, and Ayurveda on betteryoga.net.